At the prestigious dinner of an international conference, an English delegate turned to his Chinese neighbour sitting next to him and pointed to the soup and said loudly and patronisingly, "Likey soupy?" The Chinese man nodded politely and smiled. Later, the Englishman asked again, "Likey fishy?" The Chinese man smiled and nodded. Later it was, "Likey meaty?" and "Likey fruity?" The quiet Chinese man simply nodded. At the end of the dinner, the chairman introduced the keynote speaker, and it turned out to be the Chinese man. He rose and gave an articulate, humorous, and intelligent speech delivered in impeccable English. When he returned to the table, the Chinese man turned to his embarrassed English neighbour, smiled and said, "Likey speechy?" When we think about what it means to be English, what St. George's Day or the St. George's flag might mean, sometimes the first things we might come up with would be this kind of patronising racism shown in a story like that. Perhaps the English have a reputation in the world for xenophobia and racism. St. George's flag, the English flag, was for many years associated with far-right politics and racism. There seems to be many negative associations with Englishness and St. George, and few positive associations. Indeed, at the moment, it seems to me the English are going through a bit of an identity crisis. Scottish and Welsh nationalism and devolution have left us asking ourselves, what does it mean to be English? What would we celebrate on an English National Day? What would we celebrate on St. George's Day? Well, last Friday was St. George's Day. Show of hands, did everyone know it was St. George's Day on Friday? Most people. Did anyone do anything special for St. George's Day? Anyone? Oh, yeah, one or two. Cristiano did. Good. I went to IKEA, which probably isn't terribly English. What I want to say this morning is that St. George's Day should be a day we celebrate with pride. And in fact, the story of St. George helps us to understand what it is we will be celebrating on St. George's Day, what it is that is worth celebrating about England. And indeed, I want to say that we as Unitarians in particular should celebrate St. George as someone who symbolises a lot of what we hold dear. We actually know very little about the real historic St. George. Like many figures, there's probably a historical figure, but there's a lot of legends and myths kind of got built up over a historic person over several years. Nobody's quite sure where the dragon legend came from. It's kind of a medieval part of the story. But the little we do know about the historic St. George gives us much to think about. Firstly, St. George was definitely not English and definitely not white. He was born in what is now Turkey, and he lived his life in the Middle East. St. George is not only patron saint of England, but also Turkey, Syria, Palestine, Portugal, Lithuania, Germany, and Greece. St. George's Day is not a day to celebrate a narrow nationalism that sees our nation as better than others, but a day to celebrate our country as interconnected with others, as part of a global commonwealth. So St. George is an immigrant to this country. He is an adopted saint, brought here from other lands. It was the Crusaders who adopted him, as he was a soldier and he's still seen as patron saint of soldiers. And yet the story of St. George cannot be easily squeezed into a nationalist military agenda or any kind of Christian triumphalism. St. George is in fact a revered figure in Islam as well. He is known by Muslims as Al-Qadir,